Hello, I'm JP from the Way Biblical Fellowship, and this week's Torah portion is Bo. In it, we take another look at the second Exodus. We look at the last 3 plagues that the Egyptians suffered, and then consequently the Passover instructions being given, and the sons of Israel being freed from their servitude in Egypt. And of course, we have a look at what the Passover points to for us, our Passover lamb, Yeshua. So I hope you enjoy it. All right, well, we're up to the third Torah portion in Exodus. This one's called Bo, which means go in English. Okay, this Hebrew word, first letter here is a bait that makes a b sound. This letter is called an aleph, and that takes on the sound of the vowel before it. Okay, and the vowel before it is just this little dot here. It makes an o sound, so it's bo. Chapter 10, verse 1 says, And Yehovah said to Moshe, Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, so that I show these signs of mine before him, and that you relate in the hearing of your son and your son's son what I have done in Mitzrayim, and my signs which I have done among them, and you shall know that I am Yehovah. So he's saying, look, I've got a purpose in Pharaoh rebelling against me. He's got a hard heart towards me. But Yehovah, when people have a hard heart and they're in rebellion against him, he just uses it for his glory. Okay? They're not going to defeat Yehovah. They're not, as we were talking about before, they're not opposed to Yehovah in a way that he doesn't expect. He just says, right, okay, you want to do that? That's fine. I'm going to use that for my glory. And Moshe and Aharon came in to Pharaoh and said to him, Thus said Yehovah, Elohim of the Hebrews, Till when shall you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go so that they serve me. Or else, if you refuse to let my people go, see, tomorrow I am bringing locusts within your borders. Okay? We began to see in the plagues last week that the people who were in the land of Goshen, they were protected. It was only when they were outside in Egypt that they were affected by the plagues, but as they came into the land of Goshen, they were protected. And they shall cover the surface of the land so that no one is able to see the land, and they shall eat the rest of what has escaped, which remains to you from the hail, and they shall eat every tree which grows up for you out of the field. And they shall fill your houses, and the houses of your servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were on the earth to this day. Then he turned and went out from Pharaoh. Okay? So this is where they are. They're in the land of Goshen. Okay? And they are protected there from the plagues that are coming on the earth, as we will be protected in the same place. Ezekiel 34, 13 to 14, this is something that came up last week. This idea of, are we taken to Goshen? Or is that where we're protected? And last week, Charlie went through his interpretation of the scriptures and how he sees these things coming to be. And it's been a weird week to do with that as I've been putting this together. The Lord's really been showing me something. And it's weird that Jez was talking about seeing how this place had come to be, how it all started. And it started through Charlie and my relationship when we'd come together and we'd hammer things out and we'd find out what the truth of the matter was. And more recently, like Charlie used to pick me up all the time, used to take me and used to help me doing things. But more recently, I've had a fiance in a different time zone. I've got a car of my own, so I haven't needed Charlie to come. So we haven't been spending as much time together. So we haven't had the chance to hammer these things out. Katie mentioned it before. She was talking about how you complement each other so well. You've got a different way of digging into the scriptures. Somebody wrote a message while this was all on my mind, and they were pointing out how well we complement one another in how we dig into the scriptures. Got another message this week as well saying, I've just finished watching this teaching. It was a teaching of Charlie's. And then they were saying, have you got any material on the Trinity that I can watch? Which is a teaching that I've done. And it was all just kind of emphasizing how the Lord uses us together in combination and how that's the way that it needs to be done. We've kind of diverged a little bit and we've not seen each other as much. So these sort of issues that come up, we've not hammered them out so much. So we've ended up in a position where we've got two different points of view on this. Okay? Now I want to show you some things that the Lord showed me after Charlie's presentation, because I went back and watched it again, because when I was watching it I was thinking, that's a really good point. I'd not considered that. And there were some points when I was thinking, actually, that's not what I was saying. And I was kind of wanted to shout out and say, no, what about this? But I thought, I recognize the Lord's hand in this, see what the Lord's doing, and that's what the Lord showed me. And Charlie talked about on the mountains of Israel, because I've been saying, look, when the house of Israel are on the mountains of Israel, this is just the 10 northern tribes, and they're on the mountains of Israel. Charlie pointed out something that happens on the mountains of Israel, okay? This is what Charlie said.
What I've noticed is Jeremiah is more specific. When he says the house of Israel, he tends to be referring to the northern territory, Ephraim. Ezekiel, he calls the house of Judah the house of Israel.
Okay, so this is true, absolutely true. Ezekiel, he was sent as a prophet to the house of Judah, okay? But there are times when Ezekiel will deal with the house of Israel, and the Lord tells him to go specifically and speak to the house of Israel. And it's not that we can't tell when Ezekiel's talking to the house of Israel and when he's talking to Judah, or when he's talking about the whole house of Israel. It's just that we have to be very discerning when we read the passages and see if there's anything within the passages that tell us who he's actually talking to. Like in this passage, we can see he's told, lay the iniquity of the house of Israel upon it according to the number of days that thou shalt lie upon it, thou shalt bear their iniquity. For I have laid upon thee the years of their iniquity according to the numbers of days, 390 days. So shalt thou bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. And when thou hast accomplished them, lie again on thy right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. So sometimes he goes and he makes a prophetic statement to the house of Israel, and sometimes the prophetic statement is to the house of Judah. Now the house of Israel were in dispersion at this point, but that doesn't mean that he can't go and prophesy to them, that he can't take a message to them. In fact, the book of Ezekiel is full of these things. I'm aware, I've taught on this scripture quite a few times actually, that the house of Israel is not just a term that applies to the northern kingdom. Okay, for example, Isaiah here, he talks about both the houses of Israel. I've actually got this book at home called the Restoration Scriptures, True Name Edition, and it's the set-apart scriptures of the nation of Israel in restoration. Okay, and throughout this book, it'll have notes like this. When it's talking to both houses at once, but it just uses the term the house of Israel, it'll have a footnote that says, no, this is talking about both houses. So this is something that I'm aware of. In fact, I did the teaching called the two houses of Israel. Okay, all we need to do is be discerning and see what's being said in the passages to see which house is being talked of. So the idea of the house of Israel on the mountains of Israel, okay, Charlie's right. Perhaps that's not a accurate way of looking at it. Maybe that's not something that we can just discern. It says the house of Israel, so it must be talking about the 10 northern tribes. Okay, I didn't go into detail and kind of distinguish what's being talked about in each point. Charlie spoke about this verse last week as well. He made the good point about this verse. He said, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars." Okay? And this is Israel. This is talking about Israel. And this is the woman that goes into the wilderness. And this crown of 12 stars does indeed represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? It is all of Israel, this woman. It's right.
She gave birth to a male child, one is to rule over the nations with a rod of iron. This is talk, the woman is Israel, and the one she gives birth to is Yeshua. But a child was caught up to God on his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared for by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. So the woman goes into the wilderness and is described as having a crown of 12 stars, which I think represents the 12 tribes. This woman who goes into the wilderness is described as giving birth to the Messiah. He actually was from the house of Judah, so it definitely includes the house of Judah. This makes me question the idea that the house of Israel go into the wilderness in order to make Judah jealous. It seems to me like all 12 tribes go. Like I say, I'm just going to put forward how I see it. It might be wrong.
Okay, so this woman does represent all 12 tribes. The crown of 12 stars is all 12 tribes. That's what it represents, okay? It
says, "Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring and on those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Yeshua, and he stood on the sand of the sea." So what we've got two groups of believers in the end times. We've got the ones who don't keep the word, and they basically are the ones that the dragon goes off and makes war with.
Okay, I don't know if anyone caught that. And I was sitting there last week, I thought, no. Okay, two groups of believers in the end times. You've got the ones who go into the wilderness, okay? Charlie mentioned the other group of people who don't keep the word. It's not what the Bible actually says, though, is it? It says, "The dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed." Okay? So it is Israel, but this remnant of her seed are also Israel as well. And they're not people who don't keep the commandments of God. They are people who keep the commandments of God. So there's two groups of believers in the end times. Okay? There's the woman in the wilderness, and there's this other group. Okay? And this other group keeps the commandments of God.
We've got the ones who don't keep the word, and they basically are the ones that the dragon goes off and makes war with.
Okay, so not the way that the Bible describes it. And that way of understanding it is a way of understanding it that we both shared at a time in the past, weeks ago. Okay? What Yah was showing me is he's showing me the little inconsistencies in the way that we've understood it previously. I've believed this. I've taught this before in the past, okay? But it's not actually what the Bible says. And Revelation 3:10 says, "Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which will come upon all the world." So this is a promise that the ones who are keeping the commandments, who are keeping the word in the end days, will be protected. So you've got two groups. You've got the ones in the wilderness, and then you've got another group who are keeping the commandments. And they've got this same promise that they will be protected. Revelation 7:3-8 says, saying, "Hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." Okay, so the people who are protected in the end times are sealed in their foreheads. And we can see that of all the tribes of the children of Israel, okay, out of the tribe of Judah and out of the tribe of Benjamin, so Judah are indeed sealed, okay? But there are two groups in the end times. There's the one in the wilderness, and there's the other ones who keep the commandments of God. Isaiah 11:11-12, okay, this is talking about in the millennium. "And it shall come to pass in that day, in the millennium, that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people." Okay, remember there's the woman in the wilderness and there's the remnant of her seed. So he sets his hand the second time to recover this remnant. And look at this, what it says here. And he shall set up an ensign for the nation and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel. Okay, so there's the outcasts of Israel. There's the dispersed of Judah. Judah is still dispersed at this point. Israel aren't described in this way. Judah are the ones who are described in this way. Two groups of believers, both protected in the end times. Okay, the dragon goes off to make war with this other group of people who are keeping the commandments, just as he went after the woman when she was going into the wilderness, and she was protected as well.
It says, there shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his root shall bear fruit, and the Spirit of Jehovah shall rest upon him. It goes up to verse 5, and the passage continues with a description of Yeshua, unquestionably describing Yeshua. And then we're given the time frame. It tells us exactly when we're talking about. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fatted calf together, and the little child shall lead them. This description continues up to verse 9, and it is quite clear this is all about the millennium when Yeshua is reigning. Yeah. Then, having established all that, we come to verse 10 and 11, and it says, in that day, so in the millennium, when Yeshua is reigning, the root of Jesse, who we're talking about Yeshua, who shall stand as a signal for the peoples, of him that shall the nations inquire, and his resting place shall be glorious. In that day, when, in the millennium, the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that remains of his people from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the coastlands of the sea. So ask yourself, is this saying the second Exodus occurs when Yeshua returns? Because it does say the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that remains of his people. And this is definitely talking about when Yeshua comes back and he reigns in the millennium. In that day, when Yeshua is returned, the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that remains of his people from all these places all over the world. But ask yourself this, when was the first time he recovered the remnant of his people from all over the place? It wasn't in the first Exodus. This isn't talking about, this is the second Exodus. This is talking about the second time he gathers his remnant from all over the world.
And that's right. When I'd gone through it the first time, I had said that this is talking about the second Exodus, and I'd missed this nuance in it. Okay, and this is the way that it works in our relationship. Someone will put something forward, and the other person will say, what's wrong with that? And through it being hammered out, we'll come to a place of understanding. We'll come to actually understand what's going on. And again, because that's not been happening recently, we've come to a position where we've got these two opposing points of view, and that's not the way that it's been previously. And as I say, the Lord's really been drawing my attention to that, you know, this is how it started, this is how I want it to be done. So, as Charlie said, the second time that he recovers his people, okay, the first time was not the first Exodus. The first time was when he took them to the wilderness. Okay, the second time that he recovers the remnant of her seed, which keeps the commandments of God, which are elsewhere in the world, that's when the dispersed of Judah are gathered.
But we've got the ones who go inside. These are the ones who are taken to a place of safety.
Okay, so Charlie was saying, in the parable of the 10 virgins, you've got 5 foolish virgins and the 5 wise virgins. Okay, the 5 foolish virgins are not taken into the place of safety. Only the 5 wise virgins are taken into the wilderness, this place of safety. Okay? But if we examine the parable of the 10 virgins, we'll see why that can't be true. And as I say, this is the way that I used to understand it as well. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins. Ever stuck out in anyone's mind why there's 10 virgins and not 12? Okay? The 10 tribes, 10 northern tribes, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. So this doesn't happen when they go into the wilderness. It doesn't happen before the tribulation. This happens when Yeshua comes back. We're told that very clearly numerous times throughout this. 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. So half of them wise, half of them foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. Okay, so they're waiting for the bridegroom. Okay, and while they're waiting for him to arrive, they slumber and sleep. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Okay, so this is Yeshua's second coming, not before the tribulation. This isn't them being taken into the wilderness. This is at Yeshua's second coming. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you, but go ye rather to them that sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came. And they that were ready went in with him to the marriage. The marriage happens right at the end of the prophetic timeline. Okay? It doesn't happen before we go into the wilderness. And the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour when the Son of Man cometh. Okay, it's a parable. It's talking about the second coming. Okay. In Ezekiel 20:30-42, this is a passage that we need to understand, because this is saying, look, there's going to be 10 virgins who are all going to be together, and only half of them are going to make it. Okay? Wherefore, say unto the house of Israel, which house of Israel? Ezekiel called both of them the house of Israel. We'll see as we go on. This is the northern kingdom that's being referred to, but I'll show you how we know that. Thus saith Adonai Yehovah, Are ye polluted after the manner of your fathers, and commit ye whoredom after their abominations? For when ye offer your gifts, when ye make your sons to pass through the fire, you pollute yourselves with all your idols, even unto this day. And shall I be inquired of you, O house of Israel? As I live, saith Adonai Yehovah, I will not be inquired of by you. And that which cometh into your minds shall not be at all, that ye say, We will be as heathen, as families of the countries, to serve wood and stone. As I live, saith Adonai Yehovah, surely with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out, I will rule over you. And I will bring you out from the people, and I will gather you out of the countries wherein ye are scattered. Judah weren't scattered at this point. So when he's told to go and prophesy to the house of Israel, he's talking to the 10 northern tribes. With a mighty hand, with a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out, I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there I will plead with you face to face. Okay? The wilderness of the people. The people are Israel. This word am, also translated a lot of places as nation. The wilderness of the nation. Okay? My geography of Israel is not particularly great. Terry would probably be a better one to ask about this. But the wilderness, which means desert as well, the word midbar is desert. The desert of the nation, the desert of the people, is the mountains of Israel. Okay, if you're thinking of all of Israel. Yep. Like as I pleaded with your fathers. Okay. Does it say like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of Sinai? Doesn't, does it? It says like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, in the desert of the land of Egypt. Like as I pleaded with your fathers in Egypt, thus I will plead with you in the desert of the nation, the desert of Israel. Okay? So, like when you were in Egypt, that's what it's going to be like when you're in this desert. And I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant, and I will purge out from among you the rebels and them that transgress against me. 5 make it in, 5 don't. I will bring them forth out of the north country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel. Okay? So they won't enter into Israel when Yeshua comes back. When Yeshua comes back, he takes some of them into the land of Israel to the marriage with him. And ye shall know that I am Yehovah. As for you, O house of Israel, thus saith Adonai Yehovah, go ye serve every one of his idols, and hereafter also, if ye will not hearken unto me, but pollute ye my holy name no more with your gifts and with your idols. For in mine holy mountain, in the mountain of the height of Israel, saith Adonai Yehovah, there shall all the house of Israel. And Charlie looked at an event that happens on the mountains of Israel. Okay, but it's not when the house of Israel, the 10 northern tribes are there. It's after that when Yeshua comes back. So here's the distinction. All of the house of Israel, that's talking about all 12 tribes, all of them in the land, serve me, there I will accept them. So he's saying, look, I'll take the 10 northern tribes and I'm going to purge out the rebels from them. Then, when we go to the land, all of the house of Israel are going to be there. All of them in the land serve me. There I will accept them, and there I will require your offerings and the first fruits of your oblations with all your holy things. I will accept you with sweet savor when I bring you out from the people and gather you out of the countries wherein ye have been scattered. And I will be sanctified in you before the heathen. And ye shall know that I am Yehovah when I shall bring you into the land of Israel. Okay, so they go to the wilderness before they go into the land of Israel. Charlie talked about this as well, this Revelation 12:15-16. The serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And Charlie was saying, look, this is imagery that's very similar to the Red Sea crossing. Okay, so when this happens, before the woman goes into the wilderness, that's what we've got a picture of in the Red Sea crossing, okay?
And it says, the serpent poured water out like a river out of his mouth after the woman to sweep her away with a flood. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. Sounds like a bit of a retelling of something similar to the events that we see in the Moshe story.
Okay, so if we think about what we've got there, what's actually being shown, we've got a flood coming out of the mouth of the dragon and the earth opening and swallowing it up. Is that what's being pictured by the Red Sea being parted and them going over on dry land through the Red Sea? A kind of similar imagery, but I don't think that it is. And in fact, Scripture tells us what is being pictured by that Red Sea crossing. And it's in Isaiah 11, which, as we saw before, is definitely during the millennium. That was a strong point of agreement. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel. Okay, they're all together, the 10 virgins who are all together having the purging thing going on. And gather together the dispersed of Judah, though Judah is still dispersed at this point, gather them together from the four corners of the earth. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. Tell me, if they've been living in the mountains of Israel for however many years, why are they still vexing each other? Why haven't they put their differences aside? It's because this is the point when they're brought together. And they shall fly on the shoulders of the Philistines towards the west, and shall spoil them of the east together. They shall lay their hand upon Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind, with his mighty ruach is what it says in the Hebrew, shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as it was to Israel in the day that he came up out of the land of Egypt. When's the second Exodus? It's when Yeshua returns. When is it that the 2 tribes are brought together? It's when Yeshua returns. and so that we're clear.
It is quite clear this is all about the millennium when Yeshua is reigning. Yeah.
Definitely about the millennium when Yeshua is reigning. This is a verse that Charlie put up. When I read this, I thought, wow, I'd not even thought of that verse. That's a really, really good verse. Okay? I knew that there was going to be something to be discovered about it because I knew that it went against the doctrine that's in the rest of the Bible. Okay? I will surely assemble, O Jacob, the house of Jacob, talking about all 12 tribes, definitely. So it says, I will assemble, O Jacob, all of the specific, all of you, that's all 12 tribes, for sure, okay? I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together as the sheep of Bozrah, as the flock in the midst of the fold. They shall make great noise by reason of the multitude of men. So, they're all put together in the sheepfold, okay? Bozrah. What I did is I went back and I read the book of Micah to see what was going on here. It's only a short book. It's only 7 chapters. You notice he says, "O Jacob" here and then Israel afterwards, okay? Right at the beginning of the book of Micah, it says, "For the transgression of Jacob is all this, and for the sins of the house of Israel." So he says Jacob, and then he says specifically Israel. Then he says, what is the transgression of Jacob? Is it not Samaria? And what are the high places of Judah? Okay, so he says Jacob, then he specifies. Says Jacob, then he specifies. And this is actually, bizarrely enough, something that we were talking about a few weeks ago when we were talking about those that say that they are Jews but are not, but do lie. Okay, and we were saying, look, they're saying that they're Jacob. Like Jacob said that he was Esau, but he was lying. The Jews are saying that they're Jacob. So Micah he says Jacob, and then he specifies. So he says Jacob, and then he specifies Israel. Okay? He does make this prophecy, though, that he's going to assemble all of Jacob together. And as you read through the rest of the book of Micah, you see when it happens. Okay? And it comes to pass when Yeshua is reigning. That's when all of them are gathered together. So Israel are the ones who are taken to Bozrah according to Micah.
And I know that there are many verses that talk about the house of Israel being taken to the mountains of Israel, which we know to be in modern-day Jordan, where Bozrah, the sheepfold, is, the wilderness, this place. But we know that the term the house of Israel can be a bit ambiguous. And besides, I found that where there is no ambiguity, it is clear what happens in the mountains of Israel. And it doesn't just involve Ephraim. And it says, the word of Yehovah came to me, Son of man, take a stick and write on it for Judah and the people of Israel associated with him. And take another stick and write on it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and all the house of Israel associated with him. And join them one to another into one stick, that they may become one in your hand. This is talking about the restoration of the kingdom. And when your people say to you, will you not tell us what you mean by these? Say to them, thus says the Lord God, behold, I am to take the stick of Joseph that is in the hand of Ephraim and the tribes of Israel associated with him, and I will join it with the stick of Judah and make them one stick, that they may be one in my hand. So it's the same order, people of Israel, house of Israel, and house of Judah mentioned together. And then it says, when the sticks on which you write it in your hand before their eyes, then say to them, thus says the Lord God, behold, I will take the people of Israel from the nations among which they have gone, and will gather them from all around and bring them to their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land, where? On the mountains of Israel. And one king shall be king over them, and they shall no longer be two nations, and no longer be divided into two kingdoms. This is talking about the restoration that happens in the mountains.
Okay, it is talking about the restoration that happens in the mountains. The thing is, the mountains of Israel are just a place. And different things happen there throughout Scripture. So it's not that in the mountains of Israel, this is what is happening here, and it's only the two tribes, two houses can be together. Okay? If we examine that passage a bit more carefully, it says, I will make them one nation in the land of the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. Okay, so when is this? Is this when they're in the wilderness? It's not, is it? It's when Yeshua is reigning. And they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions, but I will save them out of their dwelling places wherein they have sinned, and I will cleanse them so that they shall be my people, and I will be their God. And David my servant shall be king over them, and they shall all have one shepherd, and they shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. So when are Judah and Israel together in the mountains? Is it before? Is it in the wilderness? It's not. Yeshua makes them one, and he makes them one at his coming. That's when they don't vex or envy each other. Charlie mentioned this passage as well as an example of when the house of Israel doesn't necessarily mean just the northern kingdom. Okay? And there shall be no more a prickling briar unto the house of Israel, nor any grieving thorn of all that are round about them that despise them. And they shall know that I am Adonai Yehovah. Thus saith Adonai Yehovah, when I shall have gathered the house of Israel from the people among whom they are scattered, and shall be sanctified in them in the sight of the heathen, then shall they dwell in their land that I have given to my servant Jacob. It's said when they're in the wilderness, they'll be purged. Not all of them are going to make it into the land. So when it's talking about the house of Israel here, it's after Yeshua has made them one. And they are referred to as the house of Israel at that point. See, the house of Israel was how all 12 tribes were referred to. Then, when we get into the book of 1st and 2nd Samuel, we start to see that Israel and Judah are distinguished. Then in the reign of Solomon, the kingdoms are split apart and they're given different kings. Okay? When Yeshua returns, though, they will be made one, and they will be referred to again as the house of Israel. And they shall dwell safely therein, and shall build houses and plant vineyards. Yea, they shall dwell with confidence when I have executed judgments upon all those that despise them round about them. That in the wilderness, in the tribulation, when he's executed the judgments on the nations that are round about them. It's not, it's after he's come. Now, the point of what I was saying the first week that this was discussed, I was saying that the house of Israel make Judah jealous. Okay? That's something that Paul says is going to happen. And this is what Charlie thought that I was saying.
The first point he made was with regards to the house of Judah becoming jealous of the house of Israel, which is mentioned in Romans 11:11. And he said he always thought that they would get jealous of us because we are doing the Torah. But they're not jealous and think we're a bit of a joke, that all he ever hears them saying is things like, you're not doing it right. And I can see where he's coming from, but it seems to me based on an assumption, and the assumption is that we know who the house of Judah are. I don't think it's these folk the scripture's referring to, the ones who are saying, you're not doing it right. If it was, then they've already gone back to the land, and Yeshua hasn't returned yet. There they are by the Wailing Wall. So I don't think them people are actually the house of Judah anyway. Because it tells us in the last days it's Edom who's ruling over Jerusalem.
Okay, absolutely true. But that's not what I was saying. I wasn't saying that the people in the land are the house of Judah. That's what we used to think. Both of us used to think that it's the house of Judah that are dwelling in the land and that they were made jealous by us coming back to the Torah. But I'm not saying that I believe that. Okay, what I'm saying is Paul has prophesied an event where Israel make the house of Judah jealous. Okay? Since we don't think it's the Jews that are dwelling in the land, how do Israel make Judah jealous? It's got to happen sometime, hasn't it? It's got to fit in the very small amount of prophetic timeline that we've got left. If it's not that way, which we used to think, then how is it? And what I was doing is I was putting forth an explanation, how I see it, and in fact, how I see it prophesied to be in the book of Genesis, which is what we'll have a look at in a bit. But just to be clear, this is what I said about the house of Judah, where the house of Judah come from, not the land of Israel. And he shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcasts of Yisrael and assemble the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. This is what we have with Yeshua's second coming when he sends out the angels. Okay, so definitely don't think that it's the people in the land. No. Jeremiah 23, 5-8 says, Behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and the king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely, and this is his name whereby he shall be called, Yahuwah, our righteousness. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, that they shall no more say, that Yahuwah liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But Yahuwah liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country, and from all lands whither I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land. Okay, so this is, again, it's talking about in the millennium, and it's saying, in the millennium are the days when they're going to refer to the second Exodus. Okay, that's what the second Exodus is. It's in the millennium, okay? And it's when he brought up and led all of the seed of the house of Israel, okay? The house of Israel at that point, because they've been made one, can be referred to by the collective term, the house of Israel.
What it is also not saying is that the house of Judah will find salvation spiritually. It's not saying that either. It says Judah will be, or is, Yasha, and that word can mean rescued. We've got it as saved in the English translation, but it means to be rescued.
I don't think that it's talking about the spiritual salvation. That's not what I was saying either. Okay, this whole thing with Yasha, rescued, salvation and all that. Okay, this is in fact what I said the week before. The word rescue comes from the same root as Yeshua. Yasha means to save. Okay, so this whole concept that we've got of salvation and being saved and stuff, and it all being kind of spiritualized and Christianized, it's not right. It is talking in these terms. When it talks about being delivered as well, it's being talked about being delivered from your enemies. Okay, so it's not talking about in his days Judah are going to be spiritually saved, that they're all going to start coming along to church or whatever. Okay, in Jeremiah 32, 36-37, it's got what Charlie was saying, that this is what Judah are rescued from. Okay, they were surrounded, they were about to be destroyed, they were about to be taken into Babylon, into captivity. That's what they need rescuing from, okay?
Then Jehovah makes this statement. He says, Now therefore, thus says Jehovah, the God of Israel, concerning this city of which you say, It is given into the hand of the king of Babylon by sword, by famine, and by pestilence. Behold, I will gather them from all the countries to which I drove them in my anger and my wrath and in great indignation. I will bring them back to this place, and I will make them dwell in safety. The place that is being referred to is actually called Judah. It's a place that is overrun and desperately in need of rescuing.
Okay, so Judah's in need of rescuing at the time Jeremiah makes the prophecy. It's correct.
So I read lots of Jeremiah for the context. Jeremiah and Ezekiel prophets to the house of Judah. Around the time that Judah was surrounded by enemies, Jerusalem was sieged and the people were led away into exile. So this is a people who need rescuing. This is a people surrounded on all sides by enemies. And when it says that in his day, talking about the Messiah, Judah will be saved, I don't believe it's saying that when Messiah returns, the house of Judah will be saved spiritually. I think it is saying to a people surrounded by enemies that it is when Messiah returns, the Judah, as in a kingdom, a people in a land, the territory, will be rescued.
Okay, the book of Jeremiah is actually a book that I'm very familiar with. I tend to read it on Yom Kippur. And to the people who were surrounded, who were about to be taken into Babylon, it's not saying that when Messiah comes, they're going to be rescued from that. Jeremiah makes a specific prophecy about when they're going to be rescued from that. He says, Thus saith Yahuwah, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place. So this is the prophecy that was made about when Judah will be saved in that sense. Okay? This is what it's talking about, Judah being saved. Okay? Judah in 70 AD, had the temple destroyed. Okay, they were overrun by the Romans. And this is what Paul says is the state of Judah when he wrote Romans. It says, and if some of the branches be broken off, okay, talking about the house of Judah there, the natural branches, and thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, okay, the house of Israel being grafted back in, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off, okay? And thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. Okay? And then we see Yeshua saying the same sort of thing. He says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee. How often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chicks under her wings, and ye would not? Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till ye say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of Yehovah. Okay, so they had all of these people sent to them. They had all the prophets, then they had Yeshua sent to them, and they just hated all these people. They just wanted to kill them, get them out of the way so they could do their own thing. And Yeshua is saying, until you say, you recognize that they are blessed, those that come in the name of Yehovah, your house is going to be left to you desolate. So this is what Judah needs saving from in the context of when Messiah returns. This is what it says, though. If you notice, the problem is set up earlier in Romans 11. Okay, the house of Judah are cut off. Then, a few verses later it says, for I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits. The blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Okay, if you remember when Charlie went through this in his Torah portion about the fullness of the Gentiles, the phrase that can be transferred, the multitude of nations, it's exactly the same phrase, which is what is prophesied to Ephraim, the house of Israel, okay, will happen to them. So until Ephraim is come back in, blindness in part is going to have happened to Israel. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. So again, this is in context of Yeshua's return. But bear this in mind, because I want to show you something. Blindness in part has happened to Israel, okay, until Ephraim has come in. In Genesis 46, verse 4, and I missed this when we were going through it in the Torah portion, but this is quite amazing. I will go down with thee into Egypt. This is Yehovah speaking to Jacob. And I will surely bring thee up again. And Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes. So it's Joseph, the house of Israel, which cures the blindness, which in part has happened to Israel. There's a prophetic picture of it right there in Genesis. Later in Genesis 46 it says, and he sent Judah before him unto Joseph. Okay. What was Joseph's job? To direct his face unto Goshen. Joseph was to direct Judah's face unto Goshen. Okay? Make Judah jealous. Okay? They're in Goshen. Exodus 1:5 it says, and all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already. Okay? So we've got these prophetic pictures already here of Joseph being there prior to Judah and the return of Jacob. Okay? Genesis 44, 26 to 27. This is what convinces Jacob. This is what revives his spirit, brings him back to life. Jacob being all 12 tribes. Brothers came and told him, saying, Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. And they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said unto them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob was revived. Okay? The whole house of Israel. Okay? All 12 tribes. Jacob. And this is the point at which it is. When Joseph is already in Egypt. Okay, when he's there to turn Judah's face when he's there to put his hand on Jacob's eyes and to heal the blindness. Jeremiah 33:14-17, it says, "Behold, the days come, saith Yehovah, that I will perform that good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. In those days and at that time," okay, when I'm going to do this thing, going to bring together Israel and Judah again, "will I cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land." Millennium. "In those days, shall Judah be saved, and Jerusalem shall dwell safely." Okay, Judah, it is the name of the southern kingdom. It is the name for the physical territory of the southern kingdom, and it is the name of the people who dwell there as well. That is going to be saved in Messiah's day when he comes and he leads them into the land. "And this is the name wherewith she shall be called, Yehovah our righteousness. For thus saith Yehovah, David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel." Okay, so he uses this term, the house of Israel, but we know that this is when they've been made one. Okay? And I'll throw this in as well because this is an amazing verse for anyone who's saying that the Levitical system has been done away with. It's not going to be there. "Neither shall the priests, the Levites, want a man to offer burnt offerings and to kindle meat offerings and to do sacrifice continually in the millennium." The Levites aren't going to want a man to do that. David's not going to want a man on his throne. Now, this whole thing of the house of Israel being in the mountains of Israel, okay, it says that the woman is nourished for 3.5 years. Okay? That word nourish, okay, it's, at least to me, it is talking about the same thing that we have a picture of them having the manna when they were in the wilderness, this supernatural nourishing that goes on. Now you see here, it says, this is talking, Ezekiel 38:39, this is when the house of Israel are in the mountains and they're there before Yeshua comes back, which I'll show you as well. But they're referred to here as them that dwell in the cities of Israel, okay? Now, whilst it is true that the house of Israel can refer to both tribes, the cities of Israel is a phrase that is only ever used to refer to cities of the house of Israel, okay? Cities of Israel, see in the book of Samuel, David comes to the cities of Israel, the cities of Judah, and all the way through Scripture, I checked every single reference of the cities of Israel, and it is only ever talking about the house of Israel, okay? You notice that it says that they're there for quite a while. It doesn't say that they're there for 3.5 years. They're there for at least 7. So the way that I see it is that they're nourished for 3.5 years, and then when they're a bit more established, what happens in Ezekiel 38 and 39, this spiritual entity sees them and wants to go and take spoil of them. And then there's this big fire comes down from heaven, and then they're burning the weapons with fire there for 7 years. So as I see it, there's a big period of time when the house of Israel are in the wilderness, when they're in the wilderness of the people, where they have those purged out from among them. Okay, so that when Yeshua comes back, 5 of them don't even make it. In Ezekiel 39, 17-19, I want to show you that this is definitely before Yeshua comes back, that the house of Israel are dwelling in the mountains of Israel. Okay? It talks about this event. It says, "And thou, son of man, thus saith Adonai Yehovah, speak unto every feathered fowl and to every beast of the field, assemble yourselves and come, gather yourselves on every side to my sacrifice that I do sacrifice for you, even a great sacrifice upon the mountains of Israel, that ye may eat flesh and drink blood. Ye shall eat the flesh of the mighty and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, of rams, of lambs, and of goats, of bullocks, of all them fatlings of Bashan. And ye shall eat fat till ye be full, and drink blood till ye be drunken of my sacrifice, which I have sacrificed for you. Thus you shall be filled at my table with horses and chariots, with mighty men, and with all men of war, saith Adonai Yehovah." Okay, so this is after the time when they've been in the mountains of Israel, when all of that's happened, when they've been attacked because of the abundance that they have on the mountains of Israel, then this event happens. This event is there to show us the chronology, to show us when these events happen. We read this in Revelation. We'll come to an end in a second. It says, "And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, and he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with the vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that were in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great." So this event, we're told, happens at Yeshua's second coming. It's also referenced in Zephaniah. If you remember, he was talking about it as his sacrifice in Ezekiel 39. "Hold thy peace at the presence of Adonai Yehovah, for the day of Yehovah is at hand, for Yehovah hath prepared a sacrifice." Again, this sacrifice happens on the day of Yehovah, when Yeshua returns. So in summary, there are two groups of believers in the end times. One group in the wilderness, and one group that keeps the word, who are protected elsewhere. They have that promise of God. The purpose of Joseph being in Goshen first is to turn Judah's face toward Goshen and lay his hand on Jacob's eyes. The parable of the 10 virgins cannot be talking about a time before Yeshua returns. We are told that the parting of the Red Sea pictures, we're told what it pictures, and it is when Yeshua returns and gathers the rest of his remnant. We interpret Ezekiel's references to the house of Israel very carefully by understanding the context from his writings and from the writings of the other prophets. Okay, we know when the house of Israel are all one, when it's valid to call all of the house of Israel at that point. So, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, Yah uses both of us, and he uses the quirks that we both have within us. He uses my quirks, and he uses Charlie's quirks. Okay? And it reminds me of this verse, 2 Corinthians 12:9. It says, "He said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Messiah may rest upon me." And that's how he works. He works through us both. And we come as a package together. And that's how we need to work and work through these things. So let's take a break. Okay. Try that again, eh? All right. Verse 7 says, "And Pharaoh's servants said to him, Till when would this one be a snare to us? Let the men go, so that they serve Yehovah their Elohim. Do you not yet know that Mitzrayim is destroyed?" So they are reacting in the same way the Pharaoh would be reacting if Yehovah had not strengthened his heart. Okay. If you want to have a look at the plagues and have a look at the issue of Pharaoh and free will, I recommend having a look at a Torah portion called Va'era, last week's Torah portion, but from the year before, because we look really, really in depth at the idea of free will, and we look at Pharaoh's heart being hardened and how it happens differently. But basically, Yehovah is strengthening Pharaoh's heart. We see it as he's hardening Pharaoh's heart, and so it's transgressing Pharaoh's free will. Okay, how can it be fair if Yehovah is making Pharaoh's heart hard, and he won't let them go. But what the word actually is for harden is chazak, and it means strengthen. So Pharaoh wants, ultimately, he wants his will to be done. He doesn't want the children of Israel to go. His servants, they're all saying, look, can't you see all of this destruction that's going on? And he can see it because he keeps saying, I'm going to let them go. And then Yehovah strengthens his heart, emboldens him so that he can carry out his will. And Moshe and Aharon were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, go serve Yehovah your Elohim. Who are the ones that are going? And Moshe said, we are going with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and our herds. We are going, for we have a festival to Yehovah. Now this festival to Yehovah, remember that there were three, unleavened bread, Shavuot and Sukkot. Okay, this one, whether or not it's the same one that they were talking about before, this one is unleavened bread. Okay, now I don't believe that they knew what to do on unleavened bread because the instructions hadn't been given to them at that time. Do believe, however, though, they knew the Lord's appointed times throughout the year. Okay, and he said to them, let Yehovah be with you as I let you and your little ones go. Watch, for evil is before your face. Not so, you men go now and serve Yehovah, for that is what you desired. And they were driven out from the presence of Pharaoh. Okay, so he says, who's going to go? And Moshe says, everyone. All the animals, all the people, everyone's going to go. And he says, no. Okay, I'll let you guys go, but not the rest. Okay, so he's still trying to have his will over the situation. Verse 12 says, and Yehovah said to Moshe, stretch out your hand over the land of Mitzrayim, for the locusts to come upon the land of Mitzrayim, and eat every plant of the land, all that the hail is left. And Moshe stretched out his rod over the land of Mitzrayim, and Yehovah brought an east wind on the land all the day, and all that night. Morning came, and the east wind brought the locusts. And the locusts went up over all the land of Mitzrayim and settled within all the borders of Mitzrayim, very grievous. There had never been locusts like them before, nor would there be like them again. Okay, so in terms of natural locusts, worst plague of locusts there's ever been, there's not going to be one as bad. Even the demonic locusts, okay, they're not like these locusts that we see in Revelation. And they covered the surface of the land so that the land was darkened, and they ate every plant of the land and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left, and no greenness was left on the trees or on the plants of the field in all the land of Mitzrayim. I heard someone comparing this to like an atomic bomb had gone off. If you think that they were an agrarian society, the agriculture was the way that they lived, the way that they fed themselves, and everything, all of the crops were gone. Okay, and this was right before the barley harvest. Okay, so right before a load of crops were about to be harvested, they were all wiped out. Pharaoh then called for Moshe and Aharon in haste and said, I have sinned against Yehovah your Elohim and against you. And now please forgive my sin only this once, and pray to Yehovah your Elohim that he would only turn away this death from me. And he went out from Pharaoh and prayed to Yehovah. And Yehovah turned a very strong west wind, which took the locusts away and blew them into the sea of reeds. Not one locust was left within all the border of Mitzrayim. However, Yehovah hardened or strengthened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not let the children of Israel go. So you can see this response that he has in the moment. He's scared, he calls for them in haste, and he says, look, I'm going to let you go. Just stop all this destruction that's coming upon the land. Then Yehovah strengthens his heart. He makes him brave, he emboldens him. So he will not let them go. Verse 21 says, and Yehovah said to Moshe, stretch out your hand toward the heavens, and let there be darkness over the land of Mitzrayim, even a darkness which is felt. Charlie spoke last week about this darkness that he'd felt when he was in his room. He felt a spiritual sort of darkness. We'll have a look at a verse in a second that says that that's what's going on in this case as well. And Moshe stretched out his hand toward the heavens, and there was thick darkness in all the land of Mitzrayim for 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days. Quite a a statement, isn't it, about no one rising from their place for 3 days? I wonder what that's about. While all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. Now there's a psalm that actually talks about all of the plagues in Egypt. And maybe a couple of years ago now, I had Charlie bring this psalm up, and it defines exactly what's going on here. We're not actually given the detail of what this darkness which is felt is, but we are in this psalm. Okay, so Psalm 78, he goes through the plagues in Egypt, how he had wrought his signs in Egypt and his wonders in the field of Zoan, and had turned their rivers into blood and their floods that they could not drink. He sent diverse sorts of flies among them, which devoured them. And Charlie mentioned last week that this is quite possibly actually swarms of creatures, not of flies. And that would seem to make sense if they devoured them. And the frogs which destroyed them, he gave also their increase unto the caterpillar and their labor unto the locust. He destroyed their vines with hail and their sycamore trees with frost. He gave up their cattle also to the hail and their flocks to hot thunderbolts. It all sounds familiar so far. We know that these were the plagues that happened in Egypt. But look how he describes the next plague, the plague of darkness. He cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath, and indignation and trouble by sending evil angels among them. So this darkness which could be felt in some way was brought about by these evil angels, because it doesn't mention darkness in Psalm 78. It just defines it in this way. So just like Charlie was saying, he was in his room and he felt this spiritual presence come into his room, and there was this darkness that could be felt. That's what they were experiencing as well. And Pharaoh called to Moshe and said, "Go serve Yehovah, only leave your flocks and your herds behind. Let your little ones go with you too." And Moshe said, "You yourself are to provide us with slaughterings and burnt offerings to prepare for Yehovah our Elohim." Imagine how this would infuriate the Pharaoh. Okay, the hail has just destroyed loads of their livestock. The locusts have just come along and eaten all of the green plants. They've got barely anything to eat. And Moshe then turns around and says, "Oh, and we'll need some of your animals as well, obviously, because we need to kill them to God, the God that's just brought all this destruction upon you. And our livestock are to go with us too. Not a hoof is to be left behind, for we have to take some of them to serve Yehovah our Elohim. And we ourselves do not know with what we are to serve Yehovah until we come there." However, Yehovah strengthened the heart of Pharaoh, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said to him, "Get away from me, watch yourself, and see my face no more. For in the day you see my face, you die." And we've got a moment of serious Moses face as he responds to him. And Moshe said, "You have spoken rightly. Never again do I see your face." You imagine this was the guy that every time he came and said something to Pharaoh, something disastrous happened. Okay. Can you imagine how Pharaoh would have felt being confronted with the face of Moshe here? Yehovah said to Moshe, "I am bringing yet one more plague on Pharaoh and on Mitzrayim. After that he is going to let you go from here. When he lets you go, he shall drive you out from here altogether. Speak now in the hearing of the people, and let every man ask from his neighbor, and every woman from her neighbor, objects of silver and objects of gold." And Yehovah gave the people favor in the eyes of the Mitzrites, and the man Moshe was very great in the land of Mitzrayim, in the eyes of Pharaoh's servants and in the eyes of the people. We looked a couple of weeks ago. This is quite weird. He says, "You will plunder the Egyptians. You will take their stuff." This is quite weird as well. Moshe was very great in the land of Mitzrayim. Okay, hear this said about him as well. Moshe said, "Thus said Yehovah, about midnight I'm going into the midst of Mitzrayim, and all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the female servant who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the cattle. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Mitzrayim, such as has never been or ever be again. But against any of the children of Israel, no dog shall move its tongue against man or against beast, so that you know that Yehovah makes distinction between Mitzrayim and Israel. And all these servants of yours shall come down to me and bow down to me, saying, Get out, you and all the people at your feet, and after that I shall go out. And he went from Pharaoh in great displeasure. So, we've got the servants of Pharaoh coming and bowing down to Moses. Okay, that's quite weird as well. Bear that in mind as we go through. But Yehovah said to Moshe, Pharaoh is not going to listen to you in order to multiply my wonders in the land of Mitzrayim. Again, he uses his rebellion to glorify his name. And Moshe and Aharon did all these wonders before Pharaoh. However, Yehovah hardened Chazak, the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not let the children of Israel go out of his land. And Yehovah spoke to Moshe and to Aharon in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, this month is the beginning of months for you. It is the first month of the year for you. Okay, so obviously the calendar on which they were needed some kind of tweaking. Okay, and it says here, it is the first month of the year to you. And this event that we're about to see now, which is the Passover, okay, the painting of the blood on the lintels and on the doorposts, okay, it's said to be the birth of the nation of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt where they were dwelling. And there's a rabbi called Rabbi Foreman, and I heard him make the allusion to when Israel come out from amongst the blood on the doorpost and amongst the blood on the lintel. It's a bit like them passing through the birth canal, being birthed as a nation, because previously they'd not been a nation. Before they came down into Egypt, they weren't a nation. Okay, they've become a nation in Egypt, and now they're going out into the wilderness. And this is what people have in their heads as the Passover meal. Okay? This is traditionally what people think of when it comes to Passover. What we're going to do is read the actual instructions that were given to them, okay, what the meal should actually look like. Now, Deuteronomy 16, 5-6 tells us something that we need to bear in mind, because when we observe Passover, we are not able to eat the Passover meal. It says here, you are not allowed to slaughter the Passover in any of your gates which Yehovah your Elohim gives you. So people do this. They go out and they get a lamb for Passover, and they keep it from the 10th day to the 14th day, and then they have it killed, and then they try to observe this, but we are told, you're not allowed to do this. But at the place where Yehovah your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell, there you slaughter the Passover in the evening, at the going down of the sun, at the appointed time. He came out of Mitzrayim, and we know that the place where he put his name is Jerusalem. Sacrifices completely are not allowed to be done anywhere other than Jerusalem, but we're told specifically, look, you cannot eat of the Passover anywhere else. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, on the 10th day of this month, each of them is to take for himself a lamb, according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of souls. According to each man's need, you make your count for the lamb. Let the lamb be a perfect one, a year-old male. Take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it between the evenings, and they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat. So this is not something that we can do, okay? People keep the Passover Seder. Part of the Passover Seder is this. They have the egg. Now, I would suggest that perhaps having an egg at Passover is a bit like having an egg at Easter around the same time. Yeah, I'd suggest that maybe it comes from the same sort of thing. The actual Passover Seder itself comes from when the Jews were in Babylon, when they would have taken these Babylonian traditions unto themselves. So that's not something that we do when we have Passover. And they shall eat the flesh on that night, roasted in fire with unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but roasted in fire, its head with its legs and its inward parts. And do not leave of it until morning. And what remains of it until morning, you are to burn with fire. Okay, so there's a thin line here between us memorializing Passover and knowing that we cannot eat the Passover, we can't kill the Passover, and trying to follow these instructions as if we are keeping Passover. If we are to memorialize Passover, it doesn't matter if we do things like we have the unleavened bread and the bitter herbs and stuff like that. That's fine, it's a memorial. But there are people who will go out and they'll get a lamb and they'll have the lamb killed and stuff, and then they'll burn the remains of it and all the rest of it in order to keep Passover. So just there needs to be a distinction there. And this feast is coming up. It will be something that we'll do. We will have a meal here. We will have a Passover meal. There will be traditional elements to it, but we will not be eating the Passover. Okay, we can't do that. We can't do it outside of Jerusalem. Exodus 12:4 is something that's worth having a look at, because as we've been going through the book of Genesis, we've seen this repeated thing come up. This idea of a covering, idea of a goat, an idea of deception by the covering or by the goat. Okay, Passover is kind of like the culmination of it all, where all of these things come to bear, and in fact, where they're put right. I've got a teaching on the website called Passover, Making Right the Sins of the Father, if you want to understand it, but I want to just show you this as the cap on all of the things that we've been looking at with the covering and with the goat and all the rest of it. Okay, so this phrase here, to the number of souls, this is the verse in Hebrew. Okay, these are the verses, these are the words which are for the covering of souls. And within those words, Hebrew words all come from a verb root. It's called the sheresh. Okay, and all the words are defined as to their meaning by what their root is. And then you look at the letters that come before them or the letters that come after them, and they change kind of things like whether it's in the past tense or in the future tense, whether it's the male gender, it's the female gender, and all those sort of things are determined. But if you look at what the root of this word is, okay, the root is kaf samak hey. Okay, so you see kaf samak hey and kaf samak hey, and that word is kasah in the Hebrew. We've got it translated as number of souls, because what they've done is they've looked at the verse and they've gone, it doesn't make any sense to have it as a covering for the souls. Take it according to the covering of the souls. That really doesn't make sense. So they've taken the verb root kasas, which means to count or to number. Well, if we look at this whole thing with kasa, which is the actual verb root of this word, we've had three different accounts of the goat, the covering, and deceit. Okay, there's been Jacob going to Isaac, his father, and deceiving him. He puts on Esau's covering. Okay, he takes the goat meat to Isaac. That's how he deceives, and that's where the start of this chain is. Then we've got the brothers coming to Jacob and deceiving him with a covering, Joseph's coat, with the goat's blood and the deception there. Then we've got Judah being deceived by Tamar. This is what it says of Tamar, who was paid with a goat. And she put her widow's garments off from her and covered, this word, kasah. You remember when we see these linguistic links between all of these accounts, the covering, the deceit, the goat. Okay, we know that these accounts are linked. So we do actually see this kasah in Exodus 12:4, where it says, for the covering of souls. Another place where it happens to show up is when the brothers are talking, and Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Again, it's this word here, it's kasah, it's cover. So that's what we're actually reading in Exodus 12:4. Exodus 12:5, it says, let the lamb be a perfect one, a year-old male. And the word for lamb is say. And everywhere else in Torah, it is translated as sheep. It's translated as lamb here because it's a year old, okay, but it means sheep. It never means goat. The only one time that it means goat is what it said here. So do we have here an instance of a goat pretending to be something that it's not? I would say that we do. Okay, so we've got these hints of this story. As I say, watch this teaching if you want more detail for that, because I could go, an hour and a half into that. And watch these teachings if you want to understand why perhaps making a count for the lamb is relevant and what that's got to do with the censuses taken for Israel. Verse 11 says, "And this is how you eat it, your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Passover of Yehovah." Funny that this isn't something that people, when they keep the Passover, they want to emulate. Okay? Keep it in a state where you're ready to go, basically. And if 1 year we're going to be taken on a Passover, then I would say that it's possibly good for us to do it in this state of preparation when we do Passover, for this to be in our minds. And I found this about 8 months ago. If you've ever wondered what it means to gird up your loins, okay, this is what was actually being talked about. The tunic wouldn't allow you to do heavy labor or fight in battle, necessitating the girding of one's loins. First, hoist the tunic up so that all the fabric is above your knees. This will give you mobility. Gather all the extra material in front of you so that the back of the tunic is snug against your backside. Once the excess fabric is gathered in front, pull it between your legs to the rear. This feels much like a diaper. Gather half of the material in each hand, bringing it around to the front. And finally, tie your 2 handfuls of material together, and you're all set for both battle and some hard labor. Go forth, be ye men, and gird up your loins. So when you read that in Scripture, that's what the instruction is. Verse 12 says, "And I shall pass through the land of Mitzrayim on that night, and shall smite all the firstborn of the in the land of Mitzrayim, both man and beast. And on all the mighty ones of Mitzrayim I shall execute judgment. I am Yehovah. And the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you, and let the plague not come on you to destroy you when I smite the land of Mitzrayim. And this day shall become to you a remembrance, and you shall observe it as a festival to Yehovah throughout your generations. Observe it as a festival, an everlasting law. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you can cause leaven to cease from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Yisrael." In this verse, we get something interesting. If you've noticed recently that we've been talking about how it's not right to prepare food on the Sabbath, okay, this is the verse that it comes from. And on the first day is a holy gathering, and on the 7th day you have a holy gathering. No work is done at all on them, only that which is eaten by every soul, that alone is prepared for you. So it tells us right here that preparing food is work. Okay, so that's not something that we're to do on the Sabbaths. On the first and 7th day of unleavened bread, an exception is made. So we can prepare food on that day. Now, when it comes to preparing food, the Israelites, in order to prepare food, they would have had to prepare the entire meal and make a fire. Okay, we're told not to make a fire on the Sabbath, and that would have been what that's concerned with. Both them doing work, a lot of the things that they did for work would be around making a fire, cooking on the fire, and it would be a big task. Okay, so when it comes to preparing food, bit different in my opinion. You just have to see what you think. To heat up food or something like that, because that's not work. You're putting something in somewhere to heat up, that's not work. If you're preparing a big meal, I would say that that's in transgression of this commandment. Okay, don't prepare a meal. Verse 17 says, "And you shall guard the festival of unleavened bread, For on this same day I brought your divisions out of the land of Mitzrayim, and you shall guard this day throughout your generations in everlasting law. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, in the evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month in the evening. So the 14th day is the day of Passover. That was the day that they were to prepare the Passover lamb. They were to kill the lamb. They were to have the Passover meal. From the Passover meal until the 21st day of the month, okay, unleavened bread is not to be eaten. If this is not something that you're familiar with, okay, leaven is what we would think of as yeast. Leaven to them is where they would take a lump of dough from the last batch of bread that they cooked, and they would put it in the new batch, and that would allow fermentation, and that would allow the bread to rise. So think of it when it says unleavened bread as unrisen bread, bread that hasn't had time for that fermentation process to take place. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses, for if anyone eats what is leavened, that same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native of the land. Do not eat that which is leavened. In all your dwellings you are to eat unleavened bread. Okay? And we follow exactly the same instruction. Okay? We can do this one. We can not eat leavened bread for those 7 days and remember when the Israelites came out. Yeah, that will be leavened. Flat bread is kind of what you're talking about. Moshe called for all the elders of Israel and said to them, go out and take lambs for yourselves according to your clans and slaughter the Passover lamb. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin and strike the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. None of you shall go out from the door of his house until morning. And Yehovah shall pass on to smite the Mitzrites, and shall see the blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts, and Yehovah shall pass over the door and not allow the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. And you shall guard this word as a law for you and for your sons forever. This is part of what we can remember. You'll notice here that it says hyssop, okay? And throughout the Torah, we see these elements. We see hyssop and we see scarlet, okay? The color scarlet. And it is a picture of the blood in the Passover and then blood of Yeshua's blood. If you've not seen it, Charlie did the teaching on this whole idea of Yeshua when he says that he is a worm, the crimson worm, okay, all to do with scarlet, all to do with hyssop, okay? Check out that teaching if you've not seen it, okay? It's one of the most powerful teachings that I've ever seen. Verse 25 says, it shall be, when you come to the land which Yehovah gives you as he promised, that you shall guard this service. And it shall be when your children say to you, what does this service mean to you? That you shall say, it is the Passover slaughtering of Yehovah, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Mitzrayim, when he smote the Mitzrites and delivered our households. And the people bowed their heads and did obeisance. And the children of Israel went away and did so, as Yehovah had commanded Moshe and Aharon, so they did. So this is, when we keep Passover, this is obviously the picture that it's to paint. But there's another time in the year when we're to remember this, when we're to remember the children of Israel coming out of Egypt. They haven't been told about it yet, but we have. So let's have a look. This is our campsite, this past Sukkot. Okay, that's what Sukkot's all about. It's about dwelling in temporary dwellings, being under the stars, and remembering what Yehovah did for the children of Israel. So this is why we do this. Might seem a bit mad, but that's what we're told to do. It serves a purpose. Yehovah created us. He created our psyches. He knows what it all means. So this is our campsite. We stayed there and we slept out under the stars. This is obviously Kerry, and this is a lady called Betsy. Some of you might not have met her. She is Martin's wife. Okay, if you don't know Martin, I guess that doesn't make much sense. But that's who this person is. Okay, when we were there, we were very blessed in the things that we did and the things that we saw. We saw some incredibly beautiful places. Okay, we were We were certainly blessed while we were there. This is us when we were climbing up a mountain, just as the Israelites did when they climbed up Mount Sinai. That's not what was going on in our heads, but I guess that's what was happening. Okay. Here we are where Mike and Claire were staying, setting up to do some worship. It's Claire. Here's Mike. Okay, what Mike's doing at that time, he is actually away when we were doing Sukkot. Charlie and James and Mike went and did this thing called Via Ferrata, which is where they had this line, this metal line attached to the cliff face, and you'd have two things that would be attached to the metal rope, and when you came up to a new section, you'd undo one of them and put it onto the new section, and then undo the other one and put it across. There's Charlie being Charlie with the kids. Here's Carl when we were on the boat trip going across to the mountain that we were climbing. Here we are, a mine, believe it or not, on the train. And here we are nearing the top of the mountain. And as you can see, Charlie thought it wasn't enough of a challenge to climb up a mountain on his own, so he strapped a little person to his back. But it was good. It was good. Good time was had by all. Here's Charlie and Mel on the boat trip. Look at that face. Here's Joshua when he found all of the plant machinery that was outside of the mine. Here he is in his element. But it was good. It was good. And if you didn't come this year, I would say come next year, not just to observe the commandments of Yah, do as we're told, but also because it was amazing and we were all blessed to have gone. Verse 29 says, "And it came to be at midnight that Yehovah smote all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Mitzrites, and there was a great cry in Mitzrayim, for there was not a house where there was not a dead one." Now, people look at this event and they'll say, this was an incredibly harsh thing to do. And we can look at the events before and say they were a bit strange that they were given the gold of the Egyptians. Okay? Well, this is what's going on. It was an enactment of this law. Yehovah has got this principle of justice. This is a principle that was to be carried out by the judges, which is why Yeshua came along and said, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, okay, he was saying, don't you be carrying those things out. This is a principle of justice that the judges are to do. Yehovah, obviously, is a judge who goes by his idea of justice. But if there is injury, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, lash for lash. Okay, and Yeshua repeats the same thing. He says, and with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with the same measure you use, it shall be measured to you. So this is a principle of Yah's justice. In Exodus 1:5, it tells us that the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with harshness. Okay? They made them their servants. In Exodus 11:2, it says that they are to take from the Egyptians their wealth. The wealth that the Egyptians had taken from them by making them servants and taking the fruit of their labor to themselves. They were to have it paid back to them when they went to the Egyptians. Exodus 1:8 says, then a new sovereign arose over Mitzrayim who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, see, the people of the children of Israel are more and stronger than we. Come, let us act wisely towards them, lest they increase. And when fighting befalls us, they shall join our enemies and fight against us and shall go up out of the land. So they set slave masters over them to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Bethlehem and Ramses. So what Pharaoh had done, he had taken the servants of Yehovah, and he had made them his own servants. So when we see this, when we see Moshe saying, all these servants of yours shall come bow down to me, okay, this is just, again, it's exact retribution, exact justice for what had been done for the children of Israel, exactly what had been done against Yehovah. We're seeing the reversal of it as they come out of Egypt. Exodus 11:6, there shall be a great cry through all the land of Mitzrayim. Okay, there had been a great cry before. Exodus 3:7, Yehovah said, I have indeed seen the oppression of my people who are in Mitzrayim, and I've heard their cry. Okay, same word in the Hebrew, a cry going out over the land of Mitzrayim. And the children of Israel came in and cried out to Pharaoh. Okay, same word, the same cry. Okay, they cried out to Pharaoh, and now there's this cry that's going out over the land of Mitzrayim. So it's Yehovah enacting his justice. In Exodus 4:21, it said, and you shall say to Pharaoh, thus said Yehovah, Yisrael is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, let my son go to serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, see, I am killing your son, your firstborn. So again, it's the same justice that's being meted out. They had the chance. Yehovah came and gave them a warning. They chose not to go with it, and that was the result. Verse 31 says, then he called for Moshe and Aharon by night and said, arise, go out from the midst of my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go serve Yehovah as you have said. Take both your flocks and your herds, as you have said, and go. Then you shall bless me too. And the Mitzrites urged the people to hasten to send them away out of the land, for they said, we are all dying. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, having their kneading bowls bound up in their garments on their shoulders. And the children of Israel had done according to the word of Moshe, and they had asked from the Mitzrites objects of silver, objects of gold, and garments. And these actually end up being turned into the tabernacle. Okay, that's why they've got a load of stuff to make the tabernacle when they're in the wilderness. Yehovah gave the people favor in the eyes of the Mitzrites, so that they gave them what they asked for, and they plundered the Mitzrites. Now them leaving the land of Egypt, okay, they didn't have time to add the leaven to the bread. That's why it is said to be the time of unleavened bread, the feast of unleavened bread. That's what it's a picture of, or that's what it's to remind us of. We'll see what it's a picture of in the second part. And the children of Israel set out from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, beside the little ones. And a mixed multitude went up with them, also flocks and herds, very much livestock. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Mitzrayim, for it was not leavened, since they were driven out of Mitzrayim and had not been able to delay, nor had they prepared food for themselves. Verse 40 says, and the sojourn of the children of Israel who lived in Mitzrayim was 430 years. Okay, that's what it says. Paul says this. He says, and this I say, that the covenant which was confirmed before of God in Messiah, the law which was 430 years after. Okay, so the covenant that he's talking about is the covenant with Abraham. And he says, 430 years after the covenant with Abraham was when the law was given. So if they were in the land of Egypt for 430 years, how does that fit? Because you've got all of the life of Abraham, all of the life of Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, all the stuff that went on with Jacob. So how could they be in the land of Egypt for 430 years and it only have been 430 years? That is something that you will never work out. Okay, it's impossible to work out. So we read the Septuagint version. Now the Septuagint version is written, in my opinion, it's written in a way to deny the New Testament, changes certain things that the New Testament says are true. Sorry, the Masoretic version, the Hebrew version, came after. It is written in a way to make the New Testament look like a lie. So when Paul says things like, it's 430 years from Abraham to the law, that looks like a lie because it's been changed, but look what the Septuagint version says. The Septuagint version is dated 300 BC. The best kind of reckoning for the Masoretic text is 1000 AD. Okay, so 1300 years afterwards, the Masoretic version, the version with this error in, was written. The original version said this, that the sojourning of the children of Israel while they sojourned in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan. Okay, so from Abraham up until the law, that's 430 years, according to the original version. In Genesis 15, 13 to 15, we also see another bit of a problem, or what appears like a problem. And he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve, I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. Okay? So the standard way of reading this is that they're going to be in the land of Egypt for 400 years, as we know that they're not. But if we read it carefully, what it's saying is that Avram's seed will be oppressed by Egyptians for 400 years. Okay? Something that the Torah tells us. Ishmael was mocking Isaac. Okay? Who was Ishmael? Who was he the son of? He was the son of Avram, but he was also son of Hagar, the Egyptian. Okay? So it's his seed will be sojourners in a land that's not theirs. Not necessarily only talking about the land of Egypt, because Israel was only given to them at this point. Okay? And the sojourn of the children of Israel who lived in Mitzrayim was 430 years. This is also an amazing picture of something that we looked at before. Okay? They were sojourners in this land, okay? A land wherein they were in exile. We saw it before, Ezekiel. He lies on his side for 390 days for the house of Israel, 40 days for the house of Judah. 390 plus 40, 430. Okay? That's what we've got the prophetic picture of here. So verse 41 says, and it came to be at the end of the 430 years, on that same day it came to be that all the divisions of Yehovah went out from the land of Mitzrayim. It is a night to be observed to Yehovah for bringing them out of the land of Mitzrayim. This night is unto Yehovah to be observed by all the children of Israel throughout their generations. Yehovah said to Moshe and Aharon, this is the law of the Passover. No son of a stranger is to eat it. No. But any servant a man has bought for silver, when you have circumcised him, then let him eat of it. A sojourner and a hired servant does not eat of it. It is eaten in one house. You are not to take any of the flesh outside of the house, nor are you to break any bone of it. All the congregation of Israel are to perform it. And when a stranger sojourns with you, and shall perform the Passover to Yehovah, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and perform it. And he shall be as a native of the land, but let no uncircumcised eat of it. So is this saying that when we have the Passover meal, okay, when we have our memorial meal, you've got to be circumcised to eat it? It's not saying that, because it's saying that when you eat of the Passover, okay, the lamb that is sacrificed in the way that was specified, no one who is uncircumcised is to eat of it. But the things that it tells us that the son of a stranger is not to eat of it. The congregation of Israel are to eat of it. No one uncircumcised. So what does this tell us in our Passover meal that we have? Okay, I would suggest that it tells us that you've got to be a member of Yisrael. You've got to be part of Israel. You've got to be one of God's people. Okay, the son of a stranger, not allowed to eat of it. Uncircumcised, okay, uncircumcised in heart, you're not allowed to eat of it. If you're not part of the congregation of Israel, you're not allowed to eat of it. Okay, I would suggest that it would be good for us when we eat the meal that we observe this as well, and we don't invite strangers along to the meal. Often it can be thought of as, well, this is a good way to witness to these people so they can come along and they can see what we're doing. Okay, Passover, I would say, is different from that. There is one Torah for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. Okay, Yehovah doesn't have a load of different laws, a law for the Christians and a law for the people who are in Israel, a law for this person, a law for that person. It's one law. It's got one law, eternal standard. And all the children of Israel did as Yehovah commanded Moshe and Aharon, so they did. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing to see? We could see that today. We will see it one day. And it came to be on that same day that Yehovah brought the children of Israel out of the land of Mitzrayim according to their divisions. Yehovah spoke to Moshe saying, "Set apart to me all the firstborn, the one opening the womb among the children of Israel, among the man and among the beast, it is mine." Okay, so this is when the firstborn was sanctified to Yehovah. And Moshe said to the people, "Remember this day in which you went out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery, for by strength of hand Yehovah brought you out of this place, and whatever is leavened shall not be eaten." Today you are going out in the month Aviv, and it shall be when Yehovah brings you into the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in this month. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the seventh day is a festival to Yehovah. Now this is something that we'll look more at as we're actually approaching the time, but Passover is approaching, so it's good for us to recognize, look, this is how we do Passover. We eat a memorial meal, and then for 7 days we don't have any leaven in our houses. We cast the leaven out of our houses, okay? Unleavened bread is to be eaten the 7 days, and whatever is leavened is not to be seen with you, and leaven is not to be seen with you within all your border. And you shall inform your son in that day, saying, "It is because of what Yehovah did for me when I came up from Mitzrayim." People are going to think it's a bit mad, isn't it, when we're doing things like this. This is what we're to tell them. "And it shall be as a sign to you on your hand, and as a reminder between your eyes." Okay, not talking about wearing tefillin on a little box strapped to your head. That the Torah of Yehovah is to be in your mouth. With a strong hand, Yehovah has brought you out of Mitzrayim. And you shall guard this law at its appointed time from year to year. And it shall be when Yehovah brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and gives it to you, that you shall pass over to Yehovah, everyone opening the womb and every firstborn that comes from your livestock, the males belong to Yehovah. But every firstborn of a donkey you are to ransom with a lamb. Think about the way that they were to give these animals to Yehovah. Okay, it was to be in the form of an offering, which would be in the temple. Donkey is an unclean animal. Okay, so you wouldn't be able to offer a donkey to Yehovah. So it's to be ransomed with a lamb. I think it's a good picture of the Gentiles, the house of Israel, who were cast out into the nations who were unclean. Yah says, "You will not call unclean what I have cleansed." How did he cleanse them? He ransomed them with the lamb. "And if you do not ransom it, then you shall break its neck," which I think is another great picture as well of those who aren't ransomed, okay, being destroyed, suffering the second death. "And every firstborn of man among your sons you are to ransom. And it shall be when your son asks you in the time to come, saying, 'What is this?' then you shall say to him, 'By strength of hand Yehovah brought us out of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage.'" Okay, this is why it's so important for us to be doing these things, so that this message goes out to people, so that they understand what was actually done, and so that it cements it in our head when we're actually doing these things, what they mean. We have to remember that Yehovah brought us out of the land of Mitzrayim. "And it came to be when Pharaoh was too hardened to let us go, that Yehovah killed every firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I am slaughtering to Yehovah every male that opened the womb, but every firstborn of my sons I ransom. And it shall be as a sign on your hand and as frontlets between your eyes, For by strength of hand, Yehovah brought us out of Mitzrayim. I'm going to take a break there, but in the last part, we're going to have a look at what this actually pictures for us in Yeshua, how he is pictured in the Passover, and how he is our Passover lamb. Okay. All right, so in the last part, we had to look at the actual physical instructions that they were to carry out. Okay, what the Torah actually said about those feasts, and we saw that there's some of the instructions that we just cannot carry out today. I'll put this up just so that you can see that these feasts weren't something that only applied in the Old Testament. Okay, they were followed by Yeshua. They were followed by the apostles after Yeshua. So I'd say if you're watching it online, pause the video and have a look at these references. One I disagree with is this one. Okay, I'm coming on the last trump. I don't think that that's the Feast of Trumpets. Personally, I think it's the Day of Atonement that happens on. But either way, it's a feast in the New Testament. This is obviously the reason why we are to remember as well on Passover. When we have the Passover meal, we do remember them coming out of Egypt. But we remember what was done for us on Passover as well. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 5:7, he says, "Therefore cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened. For also Messiah, our Passover, was offered for us." Okay, so that's what Yeshua was. He was our Passover lamb. So we'll look at exactly how he was. In Luke 22:14-20, it says, "And when the hour had come, he sat down, and the 12 apostles with him, and he said to them, With desire I have desired to eat this Passover with you before my suffering. But I say to you, I shall certainly not eat of it again until it is filled in the reign of Elohim." Okay, so has the Passover been done away with? Or will it be there in the reign of Elohim? Sure seems to think it will be there. "And taking the cup, giving thanks, he said, Take this and divide it among yourselves. For I say to you, I shall certainly not drink the fruit of the vine until the reign of Elohim comes. And taking bread, giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, This is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. Likewise the cup also after supper, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood which is shed for you." And we're told in Hebrews that a covenant is made when there is the death of the animal for which by which the covenant is made. Okay, so when the animal dies, that's when the covenant is made. So when Yeshua died, when his blood was shed, that's when the new covenant came into effect. Okay, and it was at the time of Passover. Exodus 12 verse 5 says, "Let the lamb be a perfect one, a year-old male. Take it from the sheep or from the goats." Okay, so this is the instruction for the Passover lamb. Obviously, Yeshua, our Passover lamb, was perfect. He was without sin. He was male, and he was taken from the sheep and the goats. He was made holy. He was set apart. Exodus 12:6 says, "And you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it between the evenings." And of course, again, this was when Yeshua was crucified. Exodus 12:46 says, "It is eaten in one house. You are not to take the flesh outside the house, nor are you to break any bone of it." Of course, everyone knows this is what happened with Yeshua, that no bone was broken. In John 19:33 it says, "But when they came to Yeshua and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs." Okay, and it says that this took place in order for the scripture to be filled, "Not one of his bones shall be broken." Now this, funnily enough, isn't actually Exodus 12. This scripture isn't in Exodus 12. This scripture that it's talking about is Psalm 34:19-20, when it says, "Many are the evils of the righteous, but Yehovah delivers him out of them all. He is guarding all of his bones. Not one of them is broken." And I think since this is the fulfillment, this is Yeshua on the cross, that we can learn from this, that Yehovah was guarding all of his bones, so that they weren't broken. It would be very, very strange for a Roman soldier to come up and find him on the cross, having been told to break the legs of the prisoners and not to break his legs. Okay, that would be a strange thing for them to do. Yeshua's bones weren't broken, and so he can be the perfect Passover lamb. And I think that this is telling us that it was Yehovah's hand in it as well. Matthew 21, 1-5, because I want to have a look at what happened the year of the Passover, which Yeshua was crucified for us. It says, and when they came near to Jerusalem, they came to Bethphage at the Mount of Olives. Then Yeshua sent 2 disciples, saying to them, go into the village opposite you, and straight away you shall find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them to me. But if anyone says whatever to you, you shall say, the master needs them, and immediately he shall send them. And all this took place that it might be filled what was spoken by the prophet, saying, say to the daughter of Zion, see, your king is coming to you, meek and sitting on a donkey, even a colt, the foal of a donkey. The scripture from Zechariah 9:9. We have a look at 1 Kings 1. This happened also at the coronation of Solomon. Not something that we look at very often, but it says, and King David said, call me Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. And they came before the king. And the king said to them, take with you the servants of your master, and you shall have Shlomo, Solomon, my son, ride on my own mule, and take him down to Gihon. And there Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet shall anoint him king over Yisrael, and blow the horn and say, let King Shlomo live. And you shall come up after him, and he shall come and sit on my throne, and he shall reign in my place, for I have appointed him to be ruler over Yisrael and over Yehudah. And Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, answered the king and said, Amen. So says Yehovah, Elohim of my master the king. As Yehovah has been with my master the king, so let him be with Shlomo, and make his throne greater than the throne of my master King David. Then Zadok the priest, and Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and the Kerethites and the Pelethites went down and had Shlomo ride on King David's mule, and took him to Gihon. When Zadok the priest took a horn of oil from the tent and anointed Shlomo, and they blew the horn, and the people said, let King Shlomo live. And all the people came up after him, and the people played their flutes and rejoiced with great joy, so that the earth was split by their noise. Okay, so we have something when Yeshua makes the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. It is just like the coronation of the king. And it's said of King Shlomo that he will be ruler over Israel and over Yehudah, just as Yeshua will be. Luke 19:37-40 says, and he was coming near, already at the descent of the Mount of Olives, the entire crowd of the disciples began to praise Elohim, rejoicing with a loud voice for the miracles they had seen, saying, blessed is the King who is coming in the name of Yehovah, peace in heaven and esteem in the highest. And some of the Pharisees from the crowd said to him, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. And he answering said to them, I say to you, that if these be silent, the stones would cry out. So what's going on here? As Yeshua is arriving with his disciples, and as his disciples start to cry out, what's happening at the same time is the high priest would have left through this very gate of Jerusalem to go and get the Passover lamb. And when he came back, this is the cry that would come out, and all of the people would come out into the streets to greet the high priest as he came back with the Passover lamb. So they heard the disciples all calling this out, and they all came out of their houses to greet Yeshua, the Passover lamb. Matthew 21, 8-10 says, and most of the crowd spread their garments on the way, while others cut down branches from the trees and spread them on the way. And the crowds who went before and those who followed cried out, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yehovah, Hosanna in the highest. And as he entered into Jerusalem, all the city was stirred, saying, who is this? And the crowd said, this is Yeshua, the prophet from Nazareth of Galilee. So he was coming in. Just as they would wait for the Passover lamb, they were waiting for Yeshua. And just as Solomon was coronated king over Israel, we've got Yeshua coming in with very much the same thing happening. Psalm 118:26 shows us what they were singing. Okay, they were singing what are known as the Hallel Psalms, okay, the praise Psalms. Blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yehovah. We shall bless you from the house of Yehovah. Now, if you remember in Exodus 12:19-20, it says, for 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. For if anyone eats what is leavened, that same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native of the land. And do not eat that which is leavened. In all your dwellings you are to eat unleavened bread. So they had to take all of the leaven out of their houses. Okay? This is what Yeshua does next. Matthew 21:12-14 says, and Yeshua went into the holy place of Elohim. He went into his father's house and drove out all those buying and selling in the holy place. This is the very next thing that he did after he came in the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. And overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he said to them, it has been written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of robbers. And blind and lame ones came to him in the holy place, and he healed them. See what these people were doing, the money changers. It wasn't according to Torah for an animal to be bought with a shekel, just a normal shekel. It had to be with a temple shekel. So what the money changers were doing was, instead of people coming in and changing their normal shekels for a temple shekel, they were saying, okay, if you want a temple shekel, you've got to give us 10 shekels, you've got to give us 20 shekels. So this is why it said that it's been made into a den of robbers. Okay, they were stopping people from keeping the Torah. They were making profit from people keeping the Torah. So what does Yeshua do? He goes in and he casts the leaven out of the house. Matthew 16:5-12 shows us the sort of leaven that is being practiced there. And his disciples came to the other side and had forgotten to take bread. And Yeshua said to them, mind and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, because we brought no bread. But Yeshua, aware of this, said to them, O you of little faith, why do you reason among yourselves, because you brought no bread? Do you still not understand, neither remembering the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets you picked up, or of the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many large baskets you picked up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread, but to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees? Then they understood that he did not say to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And I think this is something that we should remember as well. The Torah does state to not have leaven in our houses, okay? We are also to cast out the doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees, the false doctrine that is taught, okay? We are to cast that out. That is what Yeshua says that this is a picture of as well. 1 Corinthians 5 says, it is commonly reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and such sexual immorality as is not even named among the Gentiles, so as to have his father's wife. And you have been puffed up and did not rather mourn, so that he who has done this deed be removed from among you. Okay, what's he talking about? You've been puffed up. Well, he goes on to explain that it's about having leaven in their midst, and having leaven in their midst causes the whole lump to be leavened. And this is what it's talking about, being puffed up, because that's what leaven does. Leaven creates little bubbles in the bread, and it comes up, and the bread becomes corrupted, okay? The bread becomes puffed up. So this is the same image that Paul is using here. For I indeed, as absent in body, but present in spirit, have already judged the one who did this as though I were present. In the name of our Master Yeshua Messiah, when you are gathered together in my spirit, with the power of our Master Yeshua Messiah, deliver such a one to Satan for destruction of the flesh, in order that his spirit be saved in the day of the Master Yeshua. Okay? Not something that's very commonly taught in churches, is it? Okay? Someone is committing this sin, cast them out. And he goes on to give more detail. He says, your boasting is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the entire lump? Okay, get rid of that leaven out of the house. Therefore, cleanse out the old leaven, so that you are a new lump, as you are unleavened, for also Messiah, or Passover, was offered for us. So then, let us observe the festival, not with old leaven, not with the leaven of evil and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. It sounds like Paul is saying that they're going to observe unleavened bread there. Well, what it says to me, get rid of this person from out your midst, and let us observe the festival. I wrote to you in my letter not to keep company with the sexually immoral. And I certainly did not mean with those of the world who are sexually immoral, or with the greedy of gain, or swindlers, or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world. But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone called a brother if he is one who commits sexual immorality, or greedy of gain, or an idolater, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or a swindler, not even to eat with such a one. Okay? This is the picture that we have with leaven. Okay? It causes corruption. Get it out. Don't have anything to do with it. Okay? For what have I to do with judging outsiders? Do you not judge those who are inside? But Elohim judges those who are outside, and put away the wicked one from among you. Okay? We are to be careful of the people who are in our midst. Okay? And we are to be careful as well. In the idiom of leaven, we're to be careful of the leaven that's inside ourselves. If we think it's just a little sin, it doesn't matter. Okay? Paul's saying, no, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. If you let in a little bit of leaven, soon you will be corrupted entirely. Galatians 5:7-9, okay, talks about, ye did run well. Who did hinder you that you should not obey the truth, the Torah? This persuasion cometh not of him that calleth you. A little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. Okay, so if people are coming along and they're saying, don't observe the Torah, and we know some of these people, okay, saying don't have anything to do with them. Okay, a little leaven leavens the whole lump. If you're going to be in their influence, then it's going to have an effect on you. Don't have anything to do with them. That persuasion does not come of him that calls you, okay, trying to persuade you not to keep the Torah. Matthew 21:15-16 says, but when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonders which he did, and the children crying out in the holy place and saying, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were greatly displeased, and said to him, do you hear what these say? And Yeshua said to them, yea, have you never read, out of the mouth of babes and nurslings you have perfected praise? Now, this is another thing. If we've read the Masoretic text, we've never read this. This is what it says in the Masoretic text. Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings thou hast ordained strength because of thine enemies. Again, change in the text makes Yeshua look like a liar. Again, we go back to the Septuagint version. What does it say? It says what Yeshua was quoting. Okay, we kind of associate ourselves with the Hebrew roots movement. Okay, and it's all kind of about Hebrew. Okay, and it's good to have a Hebraic way of thinking, but it's not so good to get so attached to things like the Hebrew text, the Masoretic text, and say it's so important that we're reading it in the original Hebrew, and to hold that so dear to us and create an idol of that. Okay, this text is more accurate, and this text is the one that Yeshua quotes from, because this was actually translated from the Hebrew originally. Okay, it's not that the Greek was the first one that they had. This is a Greek translation of the oldest Hebrew text that they had. Exodus 12:6 says, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Okay, so what they would do, they take a lamb on the 10th day, and they would keep it in their houses until the 14th day. And during that period of time, they would make sure that the lamb was perfect, that it was blemishless. Okay, and this is exactly what happened to Yeshua as well. Luke 20:1-8, and it came to be on one of these days, he was teaching the people in the holy place. So this is after he's entered into Jerusalem, before he's crucified, okay, during this exact period of days. As he was teaching the people in the holy place and bringing the good news, that the chief priests and scribes, together with the elders, came up and spoke to him, saying, "Say to us, by what authority are you doing these? Or who is he who gave you this authority?" And he, answering them, said to them, "I shall ask you one question too, and answer me. The immersion of Yochanan, was it from heaven or from men?" And they debated among themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven, he shall say, then why did you not believe him? But if we say from men, all the people shall stone us, for they are persuaded that Yochanan was a prophet." Okay, so you understand the situation that they were in. If they said one thing, all the people would kill them. If they said the other thing, then they would be asked, "Well, why didn't you believe John? Why was he imprisoned by Herod?" And they answered that they did not know from where it was. And Yeshua said to them, "Neither do I say to you by what authority I do these." Okay, so the scribes and the Pharisees come to him. He outsmarts them. Okay, another example, Mark 12, 28 to 34. And one of the scribes coming near, hearing them reasoning together, knowing that he had answered them well, asked him, "Which is the first command of all?" And Yeshua answered them, "The first of all the commands is, Hear, O Yisrael, Yehovah our Elohim, Yehovah is one. And you shall love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. This is the first command. And the second like it is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other command greater than these." And the scribe said to him, "Well said, teacher, you have spoken the truth, for there is one Elohim and there is no other beside him. And to love him with all the heart and with all the understanding, and with all the soul and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself is more than all the burnt offerings and offerings." And Yeshua saw that he answered wisely. He said to him, "You are not so far from the reign of Elohim." And after that, no one was bold enough to question him. This is something that we see time and time again. When they're coming to question him, when they're coming to test him, and they tested him in other things as well, like the marriage in the resurrection, where they said about the Levirate law. They questioned him about whose son is the Messiah and things like that. When David says, "My Lord," and all of those things that are in the gospel accounts. But this is what happens after they question him each time. No one was bold enough to question him. It says things like this: when the crowds heard, they were astonished at his teaching. So they were testing him, and they found him to be without fault. This is exactly what Pilate says of him as well. Okay? When the chief priests, therefore, and the officers saw him, they cried out, saying, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate saith unto them, "Take ye him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him." Okay, he was declared to be without fault. He was declared to be blameless so that he could be the Passover lamb. In Luke 20, 19 to 17, it says, "And he began to speak this parable to the people. A certain man planted the vineyard and leased it to the farmers and went away for a long time." Okay, we know that the vineyard is Israel. Okay, the man who planted the vineyard, Yehovah. "And at harvest time, he sent a servant to the farmers to give him some of the fruit of the vineyard, but the farmers beat him and sent him away empty-handed. And again he sent another servant, and they beat him too and maltreated him and sent him away empty-handed. And again he sent a third, and they wounded him too and cast him out." Okay, this is in the parable, this is the prophets that were sent to these people, tell them the word of God over and over again. But what happened to all the prophets? They were killed. "And the owner of the vineyard said, What shall I do? I shall send my son, the beloved, that they might respect him when they see him. But when the farmers saw him, they reasoned among themselves, saying, This is the heir. Come, let us kill him so the inheritance becomes ours." Okay, so when the people of Israel see Yeshua, when the religious leaders see Yeshua, this is exactly the reaction that they have as well. Okay? They cast him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then shall the owner of the vineyard do to them? So basically he was saying, what shall Yehovah do to you when you kill me? He shall come and destroy those farmers and give the vineyard to others. And having heard, they said, Let it not be. But he looked at them and said, "What then is this that has been written? The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone." So more and more Yeshua was starting to challenge these religious authorities and tell them exactly what the score was, okay? Exactly what they were going to do to him and what the result would be. He says again, read it before, Matthew 23:37-39, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, killing the prophets and stoning those who are sent to her. How often I wish to gather your children together the way a hen gathers her chickens under her wings, but you would not. So your house is left to you laid waste." Exactly what he says will happen in the parable. "For I say to you, from now on you shall by no means see me until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yehovah.'" People kind of think that when it says, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yehovah," that they're not going to see him again until they say, "We want Yeshua," basically. "Blessed is Yeshua." That's not what this is saying. This is saying until you actually recognize when Yah sends a person to you to speak his word, until you say that that is a blessing and blessed is that person, as opposed to scourging them and killing them, you will not see me again. So this, okay, this which happened in 70 AD, Yeshua says, "You will not see me again. Your house is left to you desolate until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yehovah.'" John 10:17-18 says, "Because of this the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to receive it. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself." This is something that we need to really remember when it comes to Yeshua, because we can kind of think of him being taken away and executed like somebody has come and taken his life from him. Okay? That wasn't the case. That wasn't done to Yeshua. This is what the scribes and the Pharisees had in mind. It says in Matthew 26:3-5, "Then the chief priests and the scribes and the elders of the people came together at the court of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and plotted to seize Yeshua by trickery and kill him. But they said, 'Not at the festival, lest there be an uproar among the people.' So they planned to do it after the festival had been in Jerusalem. Okay, Jerusalem, 3 times in the year, all of the people were to come up to Jerusalem. So they knew all of the people were there. And they were saying, "Well, we'll wait until after the festival, then we'll take Yeshua." So that was their plan. That was how they were going to take him and kill him. In John 13:18-27, we see that Yeshua had something different in mind. It says, "I do not speak concerning all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but that the scripture might be filled, he who eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. Now I say to you before it takes place, that when it does take place, you shall believe that I am." Okay, we looked at this the other week. Okay, Ahia. Okay, Ahia with you. I am with you. Okay. "Truly, truly I say to you, he who receives whomever I send receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me." Okay, we saw the whole thing with the parable of the evil tenants of the vineyard. Okay, they did not receive him. Until they do, and they say that it's a blessing, they will not see him again. When Yeshua had said this, he was troubled in spirit and witnessed and said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, one of you shall deliver me up." The disciples looked at one another, doubting of whom he spake. And one of his disciples, whom Yeshua loved, was reclining on the bosom of Yeshua. Shimon Kepha then motioned to him to ask who it was of whom he spoke. And leaning back on the breast of Yeshua, he said to him, "Master, who is it?" Yeshua answered, "It is he to whom I shall give a piece of bread when I have dipped it." And having dipped the bread, he gave it to Yehudah from Kerioth, son of Shimon. And after the piece of bread, Satan entered into him. Yeshua therefore said to him, "What you do, do quickly." It was all in Yeshua's timing. This was the reason that Yehudah went out to betray him at this point. It was because Yeshua said to do it. Not because it was a plot of the scribes and the Pharisees. They didn't want to do it this way. But Yeshua said, "Go and do it right now so that Passover is fulfilled." John 19:10-11 says, "Then Pilate said to him, 'Do you not speak to me? Do you not know that I possess authority to crucify you and I possess authority to release you?' Yeshua answered, 'You would possess no authority against me if it were not given you from above.'" Again, he lays down his life. John 19 to 22 shows us something. I think this is quite interesting. It says, and Pilate wrote a title to it and put it on the stake, and it was written, Yeshua of Nazareth, the King of the Yehudim. Many of the Yehudim therefore read this title, for the place where Yeshua was crucified was near the city. It was written in Hebrew, in Greek, and in Roman, or in Latin. So the chief priests of the Yehudim said to Pilate, do not write the King of the Yehudim, but he said, I am King of the Yehudim. Pilate answered, what I have written, I have written. And this is what he had written in Hebrew. Okay? Yeshua hanatzrai v'melech haYehudim. Okay? They were used to looking at acrostics in things. Acrostic is when the first letter of all of the words spells out something else. Okay? What does this spell out? Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. Is what was written above Yeshua as he was crucified. John 19, 23 to 24 says, then the soldiers, when they had crucified Yeshua, took his outer garments and made 4 parts, to each soldier a part in the inner garment. But the inner garment was without seam, woven from the top in one piece. So they said to each other, let us not tear it, but cast lots for it, whose it shall be, in order that the scripture might be filled, which says, they divided my garments among them, and as for my clothing, they cast lots. The soldiers, therefore, indeed did this. Okay, this scripture, we looked at the other week, the rabbis thought that this was talking about Yosef. Okay, and we looked at all of the connections between Yosef and Yeshua. It goes on and says, after this, Yehovah, knowing that all had been, same thing, knowing that all had been accomplished in order that the scripture might be fulfilled, said, I thirst. A bowl of vinegar stood there, and they filled a sponge with vinegar, put it on hyssop, and held it to his mouth. So when Yeshua took the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And bowing his head, he gave up his spirit. People ridiculously take this statement, it is finished, and they say, this was Yeshua saying that we don't have to do the law of Moses anymore. Not what was going on. Not what was going on. Okay? I've heard it said, I have not seen a source on this, so it might not be true, but that the high priest who was in the temple at the time, and he'd finished killing all of the Passover lambs for that day, this is what he would declare. He would declare, it is finished as well. Okay, so if that's true, then all of the people who were gathered round would know this. Goes on and says, therefore, since it was the preparation day that the body should not remain on the stake on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high one, the Yehudim asked Pilate to have their legs broken so that they be taken away. So basically it was Passover. Passover is a preparation day for the first day of unleavened bread, which is a high Sabbath. Okay, that's when the Passover meal is eaten when the sun goes dark. It says, therefore the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and of the other who was crucified with him. But when they came to Yeshua and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. We saw what that fulfills. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and instantly blood and water came out. Okay, bear in mind that this is right after the high priest has just declared, it is finished in the temple. Yeshua has just declared, it is finished. Now, they pierce his side with a spear and blood and water come out. Okay, Yeshua makes an allusion and says that his body is the temple. Okay? In the temple, what they would do after all of the Passover lambs had been killed, they would wash all of the blood out down a slope with water, and it would come out of the side of the temple at this exact time that this was happening. Okay? Another thing that I think that it's pointing to, in 1 Corinthians 10:4, we're told, and all drank of the same spiritual drink. This is talking about the Israelites in the wilderness, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed, and the rock was Messiah. Okay? So the rock was Messiah. Exodus 17:6, it tells us, see, I am standing before you there on a rock in Horeb, and you shall smite the rock, and water shall come out of it. Okay. Again, I think this is what's being pictured. Now, Yeshua was the Passover lamb. He was killed as the Passover lamb. But the thing Yeshua did, he didn't just fulfill Passover that year. He also fulfilled unleavened bread, and he fulfilled first fruits in his first coming. Hey, we're told you're not to have unleavened bread in your house. So let's have a look at how Yeshua was the unleavened bread. Yeshua said to them, I am the bread of life. Okay, what does sin cause? Sin, which is what leaven is a picture of, it's a picture of death. 1 John 3:5 tells us that he was without sin. So he was the bread that did not have sin. He was the unleavened bread. In Luke 22, verse 19, it says, and taking bread, okay, bear in mind what bread they would have been eating. They would have been eating unleavened bread at this time. Taking the unleavened bread, giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, this is my body, the unleavened bread, that is my body. Okay? Isaiah 53, verse 5. The rabbis have got a tradition. It is only a tradition of the rabbis, but I think it's very interesting. They say that the unleavened bread has to be striped and it has to be pierced in order for it to be kosher to be the unleavened bread for Passover. Interesting. Isaiah 53:5 says, he was pierced for our transgressions, he was bruised for our crookedness, the chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. I think pretty obvious from the picture. That gives us a picture of the unleavened bread as well. So Yeshua was crucified, and that was him being sacrificed as the Passover. Then as the sun went down and it became unleavened bread, that's when he was laid in the tomb. And he was the unleavened bread that was laid in the tomb. And it says of the time that he was in the tomb, what is prophesied in Psalm 16:10 about this, says, for thou wilt not leave my soul in Sheol, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. Okay, he saw no corruption when he was laid in the tomb as the bread of life. He didn't see the corruption, the sort of corruption that the leaven brings. John 20, verse 1. Okay, this is how he fulfilled first fruits. The day after the Sabbath in unleavened bread, it's always a Sunday, it is the Feast of First Fruits. And we are told that Yeshua is the first fruits of the resurrection. On the first day of the week, which would have been the Feast of First Fruits, that's when they went to the tomb and they found that he had been resurrected. Okay, so he was the first fruit of the resurrection. So that is the three feasts there that are fulfilled by Yeshua in his first coming. Okay, Exodus 12:13 said that the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I shall pass over you. There's something that we can learn about having the blood of Yeshua on us, okay, and about us being passed over because of his blood that's on us. You'll notice that it wasn't just that they put the blood on the doorposts. They were told to remain in the houses where they were. So there wasn't just the blood that saved them. It was their obedience and their trust in the word of God in staying in those houses. Those houses were the ones that were passed over. Okay? Just as in 1 Peter 1:18-19, it says, for as much as ye know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of the Messiah as of a lamb, without a blemish and without spot. Missed the important verse here. It goes on to say that you should be obedient to Messiah. Okay, that's the point though. Okay, we are redeemed with Messiah's blood just as they were redeemed with the blood of the Passover lamb. But we've got to be obedient as well. We've got to remain within the house where we're safe. Now this is what Messiah did for us. Okay? Ezekiel 18:4 tells us something. It says that the soul that sins shall die. This is what Paul refers to as the law of sin and death. This is the position that everyone was under. The soul that sins shall die, it shall suffer the second death, it will be destroyed in the lake of fire. Okay? That's what everyone was under. James 5:20 tells us what Yeshua's blood achieves for us. It says, "Let him know that he which converted the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death." Okay, so this is what we are saved from. Our souls are saved from death. The soul that sins shall die. Okay, if he converts a sinner, if he repents of his sin, comes into Messiah, he saves the soul from death. Psalm 56 tells us exactly the same thing. Thou hast delivered my soul from death. Okay, so that's what we will avoid. When our souls go to Sheol, they won't be destroyed. Okay, Jeremiah 31 verse 11 talks about the ransoming that Yeshua did for the people of Jacob, for the people of Israel. It says, "For Yehovah hath redeemed Jacob and ransomed him." Okay, he didn't ransom him from himself though. He ransomed him from the hand of him that was stronger than he, from the hand of the one that was stronger than Jacob. We're told who that is in Hebrews 2:14-15. "For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil." Hasatan's got the power of death. Okay? "And deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage." So what were they delivered from? They were delivered from the death of their soul. Okay? And the power of that was in the hand of Hasatan. Psalm 49:14-15 says, "Like sheep, they are laid in Sheol. Death shall feed on them, but the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning, and their beauty shall consume in Sheol from their dwelling. But God will redeem my soul from the power of Sheol." Power of Sheol, the power of death, which was in the hands of Hasatan, so that death will not feed on them. Okay? That's what he's achieved for us. He was the Passover lamb, he was the sacrifice in the heavenly tabernacle, but he was the ransom that was paid to Hasatan as well. Romans 6:1-7. We'll finish with this passage from Romans 6. What we need to remember, if we are redeemed from being servants to sin, okay, just as they were redeemed from Egyptian servitude, Romans 6 tells us what that must look like in the life of a believer. "What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Know ye not that so many of us as were baptized into Yeshua Messiah were baptized into his death? Therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Messiah was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we should walk in newness of life. For if we have been planted together in the likeness of his flesh, we shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. For he that is dead is freed from sin." That's what the Passover freed us from. Servitude to Egypt. Okay? But this is what Paul says, okay, about us not being servants of sin anymore. He says, "Know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death, the soul that sins shall die, or of obedience unto righteousness." See, there's no middle area. You can't say that you've been redeemed by the blood of Yeshua, you've been redeemed from slavery to sin, if you still commit sin. Okay? You must then be a servant and to obedience. You've passed from one to the other. You have died through baptism, you've partaken in his death, and you have been risen again to the newness of life. Okay, this whole doctrine of once saved, always saved, and what it means to be saved is just to claim the blood of Yeshua over you, and then that's fine from that point onwards. You don't need to walk in obedience. It's complete nonsense. Paul tells us, okay, you are his servants to whom you yield yourself servants to obey. You can't say that you're not servants of sin if you yield yourself the servant of sin to obey sin. Only if you obey righteousness can you say that you're his servant. But God be thanked that ye were servants of sin, but ye have obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered to you, the Torah. Being then made free from sin, ye became servants of righteousness. Okay? Made free of sin, you became servants of righteousness. Okay? If this didn't happen, if you didn't become a servant of righteousness, then you've not been made free from sin. You're not redeemed from Egypt by the blood of the Passover lamb. Shall we pray? Father, I thank you for what you did, coming in the flesh and dying for us to redeem us from the power of death that was over us, that we put ourselves under. I just pray, Father, that you illustrate to us what it is to not be servants of sin, what it is to be servants of righteousness, to help us when we slip, but to put it in our hearts that we serve and obey you, that we're your servants, that we can't say that we're your people, we can't say we're your servants whilst not being. Let's pray, Father, that you really instill this in us. Thank you for everything that you've revealed in your word to us. Thank you for what you're doing here in this fellowship. Thank you, Father. Amen.